My name is Adrian. I am 34. For most of my life, I was the dependable one, the reliable son, the fixer. I remembered birthdays, patched leaking pipes, paid surprise bills, and drove overnight across state lines when my brother's car broke down again. I didn't resent it. Not really. I believed that's what families did. My parents taught me that loyalty often meant sacrifice, and I embraced that idea even when I seemed to be the only one living by it. It wasn't always like this. We used to be close, or at least I thought we were, but things shifted over time, small, sour changes. It began with subtle jabs at family dinners. Adrian's married to his work, my dad would joke. Guess that's why we're still waiting on grandkids. My mom would sigh if I missed brunch, even if I had a big client presentation Monday. Your brother makes time, she'd say, ignoring the fact that working as a barista with no rent isn't quite the same. I let it go, smiled tightly, made a joke at my own expense. It was easier to laugh than admit how much it stuck, but the weight added up. I'd fly them out for vacations, book the best hotels, pick up restaurant bills, even cover my brother's monthly overdraft fees just this once, which somehow became a routine. Still, I felt like an outsider in my own family. My thoughts were ignored in group texts. My name didn't make it onto Christmas place cards, each one hand-lettered by my mother. I didn't even get a stocking anymore, yet I kept showing up. For birthdays, holidays, house repairs, financial emergencies, I was always there. Until I was in single quotes. It started to fall apart slowly. A few months back, the family accountant sent me the usual quarterly update about the trust, something my grandfather had set up decades ago. The trust was sizable, but more than that, it was symbolic, an anchor for the family. I was one of two CEO trustees. The other was my Uncle Raymond, who treated it like a hassle. Just sign it, Adrian, he'd say, waving of the details. You're the numbers guy, and I was. Finance had been my career since college. Managing money was second nature. I never asked for more. I never made it complicated. I just kept everything running, but that email included something new. A clause I hadn't noticed before, one that, under certain conditions, gave me final say over discretionary distributions if my CEO trustee didn't meet specific thresholds. I stored the detail away. I didn't want control, I just wanted calm. Then came the message. It was a Thursday, the kind of dull day where nothing's wrong, but nothing feels quite right. I had just ended a client call when my phone buzzed. A group text from my mom. We've talked it over and think we need space. Please don't reach out anymore. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that. My uncle reacted with a thumbs up. My brother, predictably, said nothing. I stared at the message, confused. Maybe it was a joke, a misstep. But the longer I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. It was calculated. That's when I remembered a voice message from my brother the week before. He was half drunk, laughing. Mom says you're getting weird about the money, complicating things. You know, this family would run smoother if you'd stop trying to control everything. And suddenly, it all made sense. The cold tone at the last dinner, my name left of my nephew's birthday invite, the way my uncle had started handling paperwork behind my back. This had been planned. They thought I'd step aside quietly, leave things to them like always. I looked at the message again, read it 3 times. I could respond it with a plea, listed everything I'd done for them, but I didn't. I sent one sentence. Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing. No reply needed. That night, I logged into every account tied to the family trust, every investment, every emergency fund I'd created. I wasn't being petty. I was being thorough. When I saw my uncle had just approved a $15,000 vacation advance, I knew I wasn't overreacting. The paper trail was messy. Property upkeep turned out to be a casino in Reno. My brother had claimed $6,700 for medical travel, a trip to Coachella, which I knew firsthand. By midnight, I froze the trust under the clause, flagged it for audit, emptied the vacation fund into a holding account pending review, and triggered alerts on all large transfers. Finally, I updated the tax profile. Without the safeguards I'd maintained, the trust would now fall under the standard estate tax bracket, the one I'd helped them avoid for years. That buffer gone. A T for 02 am. My phone blew up. 17 calls from my brother, 6 from my mom, 1 from Uncle Raymond. No voicemails, just frantic, unanswered calls. I ignored them. I didn't read the texts that followed. I sent one final message to the group chat, wishing you all the distance you asked for. No emojis, no punctuation. I locked my phone, set it on the nightstand, and slept better than I had in months. What they didn't know, what they still don't, is what else I walked away with. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. I went for a run. It was cold, out the kind of sharp air that wakes up your lungs and clears your head. I ran until my legs ached, until I felt alive again. For once, I wasn't thinking about fallout. Not yet. Not until I got home to 24 unread messages. The tone had shifted. Early ones were furious. My brother, you can't just mess with the trust. My mom, you're being dramatic. We just needed some space, not this, Uncle Raymond. If this is your tantrum, you've gone too far. Expect legal action, but the later ones were softer. Can we just talk? You're overreacting. We didn't mean to hurt you. And finally, from my dad, who hadn't said a word until then, please don't do anything you'll regret. I read it twice. Laughed. Deleted it. They didn't understand, and maybe never did. I wasn't acting out of spite. This wasn't revenge. I made a decision, a clean break, exactly what they'd asked for. Whether they knew it or not. Let me step back and tell you what I took. It started 2 years ago, right after my grandfather passed. A quiet man, stern but kind. He never sought attention but remained sharp to the end. After the funeral, he pulled me aside. His eyes were wet but steady. He handed me a letter. Not a will, not legal paperwork, just a handwritten note in his no-nonsense script. You're the only one I trust to protect the family from itself. That was it. No signature, no elaboration. I tucked it away in my safe, behind old deeds and bonds. I thought he meant taxes, the trust, paperwork. But now, I know better. He saw them clearly, even when I didn't. What I took wasn't just money, it was leverage. Protection. Over the years, as I drafted documents, balanced books, and kept everything stable, I noticed little red flags. A missing signature, duplicate charges, strange transfers. My uncle got careless. My brother never respected the value of $1, especially when it wasn't his. So I documented it all. Every receipt, every transfer under my name, every unpaid loan. I recorded screen captures, logged emails where my mother thanked me for paying taxes she claimed she'd handled. But the most important item, ownership of the lake house. That home had always been framed as a shared family getaway. But after Grandpa died, I used my personal funds to quietly pay off the mortgage. I never changed the mailbox. Never mentioned the title change. I just made the payments while they took photos and made memories. My brother even proposed there, that it's mine, fully paid, legally filed. The deed sits in my desk drawer, signed, notarized, untouched. So when I froze the trust, yes, the family finances stalled. The vacation fund dried up. Estate protections disappeared. But the lake house, that was never theirs. They built memories on borrowed time. Now it's locked, empty, off limits. I changed the gate code, scheduled a security upgrade, and just, for good measure, listed it on a luxury rental site. $3,000 a night. Booked solid for 5 months. I didn't do it for profit. I did it because my grandfather trusted me to safeguard the family from themselves. That night, my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Her tone was tight, on the edge of tears, but composed. Adrian, we didn't mean what we said. Things have been tense. We miss you. Your brother's struggling, and your uncle, he's overwhelmed. We shouldn't have pushed you away. Please call. Let's talk. I listened once, then deleted it, because the truth. This was never about one message, or a single account. It was years of being the fallback, the unacknowledged safety net they turned to without gratitude. They cut the cord. I just made sure they couldn't cling to it when things started to fall, and now they're falling. What comes next? Let's just say, they haven't realized what else I walked away with, but they will. They always do. 2 days later, the group chat lit up again. This time, full panic. A message from my cousin Laia, one of the few relatives I actually like. She stays out of drama, shows up only out of obligation. But even she was rattled. Hey, I don't know what's going on, but Aunt Lisa is freaking out. Something about the foundation documents. She said you locked her out of the shared folder. I hadn't expected that to surface so quickly. See, the foundation wasn't a real charity, not in the traditional sense. It was a tax vehicle. Legal, but shady. My uncle set it up 10 years ago for philanthropic family spending. I'd helped build the digital infrastructure when no one could tell a password from a PDF. I had full admin rights, always did. So after their message, I revoked all user access, encrypted the entire thing. Technically, I didn't take anything. But they didn't have the right to use my name and ID on the original filings either. And I'd kept proof screenshots, metadata, IP logs. When Aunt Lisa found out, she couldn't access the foundation's financials, reports, or quarterly tracking spreadsheets. I imagine she lost her mind, probably pacing around her kitchen in those hideous leopard print slippers, shrieking into her wine glass, tossing her phone at my uncle and yelling, "What did O'Brien do now?" And just like that the cracks widened, and then everything began to collapse. I received an email that night from a law firm I didn't recognize. A polished, boutique practice out of Chicago, clearly trying to sound more intimidating than they were. The subject line read, "Urgent Family Trust Access Inquiry." I didn't open it. I simply forwarded it to my attorney with a short note. "This is likely the first of many. Keep me looped in if anything important surfaces." The next day, my brother showed up at my condo. I wasn't home intentionally. I had expected something like this. The building has a concierge and full surveillance. He didn't exactly make a quiet entrance. The front desk called me, slightly alarmed. He had slammed his hand on the counter and demanded access upstairs, shouting about family emergencies and stolen property. Later, I reviewed the footage. There he was, hoodie wrinkled, pacing, agitated. He looked less like a grown man and more like a college dropout having a bad day. He stayed in the lobby for half an hour, then left. No call, no message, just an Instagram story. A photo of our grandfather's urn, yes. The actual urn from our parents' mantle. The caption read, "Some people forgot where they came from." And that's when I realized the tone had shifted. This wasn't panic anymore. This was manipulation. They were trying to guilt me, shame me into backing down. That image hit harder than I expected. My grandfather meant the world to me. He was the only one who really listened. The one who taught me to do what's right, even when it's hard. And now they were using his memory like a weapon. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I went to my safe and took out the letter he had written me, the one I mentioned earlier. Folded, a little yellowed, the ink beginning to fade. I read it again. Then, for the first time, I flipped it over. In the corner, faintly written, were 5 numbers. It looked like a coded bank account, maybe, or a locked combination. I couldn't believe I'd missed it all these years. I scanned the number into my files, then pulled out the folders I'd been compiling. Documents on the trust, property deeds, and the business accounts my uncle had opened without notifying anyone. In an old ledger from 15 years ago, I found it an account that hadn't been touched. Cross-referencing it with the estate filings, I saw a single entry, emergency reserve. No balance, no details, no sign of access until now. That's what I uncovered. Not just leverage, not just evidence or assets, but a legacy. A financial safeguard my grandfather quietly set aside. Something the rest of them had clearly forgotten. It wasn't a massive fortune, but it was enough. Enough to change everything. I wasn't sure what to do with it yet. Not until I got one last message from my mother. Just 6 words. "We didn't raise you like this." I didn't respond. Not right away. But I knew what would come next, and they weren't ready for it. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking at that message. "We didn't raise you like this." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was judgment. An attempt to put me back into the role I'd always filled, the compliant son. The one who gives, forgives, and quietly picks up the pieces. But that sentence wasn't about guilt. It was about control. And in that moment, I understood there was no going back. Not after the way they twisted my loyalty into obligation, my support into duty, and my silence into permission. The next morning, I called my attorney, Natalia. She's sharp, direct, and exactly the kind of person you want when things get complicated. We met through a mutual client. She had a talent for seeing things 2 steps ahead and a candor I respected. I laid everything out for her, what I had access to, what they'd done, the hidden transactions, the trust clause they clearly hadn't read. When I told her about the account my grandfather had quietly left behind, she paused for a moment. Then she said, "You have more power than you think. But if you go forward, O'Brien, be prepared to lose them. All of them." "I already have," I told her. She didn't ask any more questions. Within a week, the wheels were turning. First, we filed for a full audit of the trust. Natalia helped me draft and submit a formal petition to have Uncle Raymond removed as CO trustee, citing financial misconduct, unauthorized withdrawals, and failure to notify me about key decisions. The petition included over 100 pages of documentation, emails, timestamps, flagged expenses, even recordings. I left nothing out. Next, we contacted the board of the family foundation, mostly symbolic names, but ones that cared about optics. We presented evidence of misused funds, fake receipts, and trips labeled as charity consulting that were anything but. The response was swift. Uncle Raymond resigned from the board within 48 hours to avoid a deeper investigation. By the end of that week, my brother was suspended from the startup incubator my parents had bankrolled funded through the trust. He wasn't an official beneficiary, and his salary had been funneled through a shell entity under my uncle's name. With the trust frozen and under review, everything he touched became a liability. As for the lake house, I didn't just keep it. I sold it quietly. I found a private buyer looking for a retirement retreat. They didn't hesitate at the $2.1 million asking price. The deal closed in under a week. The home that once hosted family anniversaries, birthdays, and chaotic 4th of July barbecues was gone. No warning, no farewell, just new keys and a new owner. I didn't keep the proceeds. That wasn't the goal. Instead, I used the money to establish a new foundation, transparent, structured, with a mission. I named it the Hayes Initiative, after my grandfather, not our family name. Its focus: financial literacy for underserved youth, something he always believed in but never got to pursue. I appointed Natalia to the board and brought in colleagues I trusted, people with experience and integrity. This was everything the original foundation claimed to be, but never was. Then I sent the letter, not an email, a real letter, printed, signed, and mailed to every close family member: my parents, my brother, Uncle Raymond, Aunt Lisa, and even Lara. The envelope was heavy, formal, impossible to ignore. It read: Dear family, this letter serves as formal notice that I am withdrawing entirely from all shared financial obligations, including but not limited to the family trust, foundation operations, discretionary accounts, estate planning, and vacation properties. As of today, I hold no administrative, fiduciary, or advisory responsibilities. Legal counsel has been appointed to manage all ongoing matters, and appropriate authorities have been informed of financial discrepancies where relevant. I have taken measures to protect my name, assets, and professional standing. This is not revenge. It is a boundary. You requested distance. Now you have it. Adrian. There was silence at first. No replies. No calls until my father appeared at my door. I heard the knock before I saw him, slow, composed. Not like my brother's early outburst. When I opened the door, he stood there wearing a blazer, as if he'd come from church or court. His face looked pale, tired, the expression of a man who had finally lost something he couldn't buy back. Adrian, he said. His voice cracked. I didn't move, didn't invite him in. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph, an old one of me and Grandpa, sitting on the dock behind the lake house. I was maybe 10, holding a fishing rod, smiling with a gap in my teeth. Grandpa was looking at me, not the camera. I found this in one of his drawers, my dad said, his hand shaking a little. I thought you should have it. I looked at the photo. Why now? I asked. He looked away. Because you were right about everything. We used you. We took from you. And we never said thank you. When you finally set a boundary, we acted like you were the problem. But you weren't. We were. There was a pause. You're not here about the trust? I asked calmly. No, he replied quickly. I don't want to lose my son. It was the first sincere thing he'd said in years. But it wasn't enough. I'm not angry anymore, I told him. But I'm not coming back. His face tightened, not in anger, but in sorrow. The quiet kind that comes when something truly ends. I understand, he said, and I believe. He did. He turned to leave. Just before reaching the elevator, I called out, Dad. He looked back. Grandpa left me something. A letter. He told me to protect the family from itself. He nodded. And you did. Then he left. In no final argument. No dramatic scene. Just quiet acknowledgement. In the weeks that followed, the audit wrapped up. The trust was dissolved. My uncle was quietly fined. My brother downsized apartments and stopped tagging me in his rants. My mother never called again, and I stopped expecting her to. I focused on the new foundation, gave talks, mentored students, taught them how to read contracts, understand finances, and manage influence responsibly. Sometimes I think about that lake house, the dock, that kid with the missing tooth, and the man who understood what no one else did, but I've never regretted walking away, because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let the family fall apart. And when they did, I didn't just survive, I finally lived.